Welcome back, everyone. In today's explainer, we're embarking on a pretty fascinating journey deep into the engine room of the Go runtime. We are going to trace the exact end-to-end life cycle of a Go routine, from its very creation all the way to its completion and recycling. If you've ever wanted a complete, structural picture of the Go scheduler's internal architecture, you are in exactly the right place.
So here's the core mystery we're unraveling today. How exactly does Go manage to juggle hundreds of thousands of concurrent tasks at the exact same time, without completely exhausting your system's memory or just crashing the CPU? To understand this massive scale of concurrency, we really have to look at the fundamental building blocks of execution.
Okay, let's dive into this. The secret to Go's massive density lies in lightweight execution. Notice how traditional OS threads are managed in kernel space and are, well, notoriously heavy. A single thread requires a fixed stack of 1 to 8 megabytes. If you try to run 100,000 of those, you're going to run out of memory almost instantly. Go solves this by using goroutines. These are user space threads that start with a tiny, dynamic 2 kilobyte stack. Context switching between them is incredibly cheap because it happens entirely in user space, saving just a few registers like the program counter and stack pointer. It's a brilliant end-to-end scheduling model that maps many lightweight Go routines onto a much smaller pool of heavy OS threads. Here is our roadmap for today. 1. The GMP architecture blueprint. 2. Birth of a Go routine. 3. The infinite schedule loop. 4. Handling blockers and syscalls. 5. Preemption and garbage collection. And finally 6. The end-to-end timeline.
Section 1. The GMP architecture blueprint, or the core components of the factory. To really grasp this flow, I like to think of the Go runtime as a highly efficient factory, with very specific components working in absolute perfect harmony. The core of this factory is the GMP model. The G stands for Go routine. This is our unit of work, and it contains the execution stack and the program counter. The M stands for machine. This is the actual OS thread provided by the kernel. You can think of it as the worker. Finally, the P stands for processor, a logical resource or context that's required to execute Go code. Think of P as the workstation. Now, the absolute golden rule here is that an M must bind to a P in order to execute a G, and the number of Ps is strictly limited by your Gmax proc setting, which is exactly what prevents your hardware from thrashing.
Moving on to Section 2, Birth of a Go routine, the call to adventure. Let's start our hero's journey, right? What exactly happens when you type that Go keyword in your code? Well, when you call gofunc, the runtime invokes a function called newproc. This initializes a new G struct with that tiny 2 kilobyte stack we just talked about. But where does it go from there? The scheduler actually places this brand new Go routine right into the processor's run next slot. This is a special single slot high priority queue. If run next is already occupied, it gets pushed into the processor's local run queue, or LRQ. This design isn't an accident. Keeping the new Go routine local to the processor drastically improves CPU cache locality.
Section 3. The infinite schedule loop. The road of trials begins.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the lifecycle state machine our Go routine is going to navigate. Now that it's queued up, it enters the execution engine. This is where the real work happens. It starts as idle during creation, it becomes runnable when it hits the queue, and running when it's actively sitting on the CPU. Along the way, it might hit syscall or waiting states if it encounters blockers, before finally reaching the dead state. And this isn't just theory, these states dictate exactly how the runtime treats our Go routine at any given microsecond.
The engine driving all of this is the infinite schedule loop. An OS thread, our M, enters this loop just constantly looking for work. It selects a runnable G from its local queue and calls the execute function. Under the hood, this actually uses an assembly-level function called gogo to restore the Go routine's registers and jump to its program counter. At this exact moment, your Go code is actively running on the CPU.
But wait, what happens if a processor just runs out of work? The Go scheduler is a brilliant, self-correcting system utilizing a work-stealing algorithm. If a local queue is empty, the thread searches for work in a very specific order. First, 1 out of 61 times, it checks the global run queue. This is to prevent older, less prioritized tasks from starving. Then it checks its local queue, the network polar, and if all else fails, it looks at a random neighboring processor and quite literally steals half of the Go routines from its local queue. This ensures that your CPU resources are absolutely never sitting idle while work is pending elsewhere.
Section 4. Handling blockers and syscalls, overcoming systemic obstacles.
And this brilliantly illustrates how Go handles real-world bottlenecks. Our Go routine is running smoothly, sure, but software has to talk to the network and the disk, right? So how does Go bypass network blocking? It uses a dedicated network poller integrated with OS-specific APIs, like Linux's epoll. When our Go routine makes a network request that just isn't ready yet, it doesn't freeze the OS thread. Instead, the Go routine is moved to a waiting state and essentially parked. The thread is immediately released to go find other work. Once the network data finally arrives, the network poller injects our parked Go routine back into the run queue. It is incredibly efficient.
Now, heavy blocking system calls, like reading a massive file from disk, are handled a bit differently. These calls trap both the Go routine and the OS thread right in the kernel. To prevent the entire workstation from just stalling out, the runtime performs a handoff. It detaches the processor from the blocked thread and immediately attaches it to a new or idle thread so it can keep executing other Go routines. Once that system call is finally finished, the original Go routine re-enters the queue.
Section 5. Preemption and garbage collection, the watchdogs and the climax. We now introduce the watchdogs. What happens if a Go routine enters an infinite loop and absolutely refuses to give up the CPU? Well, enter the sysmon thread, the system monitor. Sysmon is highly unique because it runs entirely without a processor. It just sits in the background, constantly watching the system. If it spots a Go routine hogging the CPU for more than 10 milliseconds, it steps in. Since Go 1.14, sysmon can trigger asynchronous preemption by sending a SIG URG signal directly to the OS thread. This literally forces the thread to pause the greedy Go routine, save its context, and push it back onto the global queue. Sysmon ensures total fairness across the board.
Of course, the scheduler is also deeply intertwined with the garbage collector. During a GC cycle, the scheduler has to orchestrate these brief stop-the-world pauses. It signals all running processors to halt at specific safe points. But remember, Go's GC is highly concurrent. It uses a tricolor marking algorithm, and the scheduler actually assists by spawning specific GC worker Go routines. These run right alongside your application code to help mark and sweep memory without causing those massive, dreaded latency spikes. Section 6. The end-to-end timeline. The resolution.
Let's move to and see how this builds out as a complete temporal flow. Our Go routine has survived creation, execution, work stealing, network calls, and even preemption. At 1 microsecond, newproc creates our struct. By microsecond 2, it's queued in run next. At microsecond 3, the M thread pulls it into the execute loop. If it runs too long, say around the 10 millisecond mark, sysmon preempts it. Finally, when the function actually completes, it calls go exit. The Go routine enters the dead state, but here's the kicker. It isn't destroyed. It's placed into a free list so its memory can be instantly recycled for the very next Go func call.
So the crucial point is how all of these incredibly complex systems, the local and global queues, the network poller, the sysmon watchdog, and the garbage collector, all harmonize through that central GMP model we started with. By doing the heavy lifting in user space and cleverly managing the underlying kernel threads, Go achieves its absolutely legendary low latency and high throughput.
We've covered a massive amount of ground today, unpacking the pure systems engineering magic that makes Go so powerful. You now understand the internal architecture of the Go scheduler, from Go routine creation to completion. But here is a question to leave you with. Now that you know exactly how cheap these Go routines are and how brilliantly the runtime manages them, how is this going to change the way you architect your next highly concurrent Go application? Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep building.